Hey folks, Studio here. So today's daily is taken from the perspective of Rincent, and we're looking at 80 solo top Kale. So this is on Rincent smurf Lincent, and it's at the 1800 elo-ish area. It's up there. And Kale is a very weird character for me, because she went from being this ridiculously good tank with horribly flawed design that was just atrocious to play against, to a support, to this really good split pusher, to the 80 carry we know and don't really love. But anyhow, I think Rincent does a really good job with her. He has a guide on solomid.net that I will be linking at the description, so you should check that out. And yeah, this is a pretty cool game, pretty interesting. Think about how he does damage and how it's very sustained as you're watching it. But let's hop into the replay. So first things first, let's see who's playing who. We got Lincent on Kale, Nabe on Morgana, Mikezilla on Dr. Mundo, Gangsters on Corky, Valigarmanda on Lulu, Tofu Man of Truth on Ari, Captain Crunch on Nocturne, Snack Attack on Nidalee, Cold Soul on Caitlyn, Fluffy B3R on Blitzcrank. And I'm loving the food theme going on for Red Team. They got the Snack Attack, they got the Tofu Man, they got Captain Crunch here to serve the enemies breakfast and death. So Blitzcrank creates very, very scary level 1 fights. But once his grab is down, he's kind of worthless. And once Ari missed her charm, she was kind of worthless too. And with Morgana Binding hitting the one person not near her team, she got kind of worthless. I just kind of love that engagement because it was very, very solo queue. People tried to do their thing, it didn't work out right, and nothing happened. They were able to not overcommit, but it was still just kind of a weird engagement. Now, right here, Lincent is buying a 4th health pot. It's really good to do this as top lane when you start with boots. It just gives you a nice little edge, and buying one more health pot can be the difference between being at full HP and being at half when harassing an enemy in lane. And the way Kale works is, when she's in lane and has her E up, she does a ton of damage. Right now she actually does 86 before mitigation, and she hurts quite a bit. Once that E falls down, Kale does not have many options. She can nuke with her Q, she could do a little bit of damage, and if you're next to her, she has auto attacks. But that's not reliable, and she's weak. So you'll see Lincent, when he has his E up, he is being aggressive, he's being out there. He wants to try and get pokes on Nidalee. But once E is off and on cooldown, he just backs off. You know what, not gonna mess around. No need to. And the pressure from Kale really comes from combining her Q and her E to slow someone and just follow up with auto attacks. So right there, Nidalee's playing a lot of brush juke play. But even then, Rincent is following up, he's trying to get his E on her, trying to deal damage whenever he can. And Nidalee wants to play a very pokey game, you know, attack, heal, attack, heal. Rincent just wants to kill her. And as you can see, he wins trades, she just can't do anything, even with her heal, even with her attack speed boost. Now, one thing to note is, if you want to not die, don't lag out into the enemy Nidalee and big creep wave. Because as you can see, you die when that happens. Now, to talk about Rincent's runes and masteries, he actually has really interesting runes. Like, there's nothing too special here. He has 11 armor penetration, a lot of attack speed, and not a lot of attack damage. He has plus 11, so he does have runes, but nothing over the top. The reason is he wants to play a harass game and sustain damage game with his E, so he's going to focus on continuous damage, so attack speed becomes a lot stronger. Normally in this case you'd see a lot of armor penetration, but he does a lot of magic damage. You might see a lot of attack damage, but his E really provides enough of a boost already. And Kale's base attack speed is fairly slow actually, so he's trying to take advantage of her E and just maximize it with attack speed. And as you can see, in the sustained fight, Nidalee just doesn't win. Nidalee does have 2 Doran's Blades on Lincent, and she still cannot outdamage him. Now, they really pushed the limit of the tower damage here. So the Q was barely not enough. The E is barely not enough. Rincent is down to 100 HP, Kale's down to 34. The perfect heal bait. Rincent is down to 30 HP. And in this case, it's scary for both players, because Kale has a little more range with her E up, but Nocturne comes in for a kill. And Nocturne doesn't expect this, but Kale does incredibly high damage right now. So Q and an E, and he's 2 shots from death. One more auto attack, he has one more auto attack before death. Lily could not help out because creeps would have killed her. And Rince is barely able to clean him up. One more auto attack would have let red buff kill him, and he may have not actually gotten the Nocturne kill anyways. And that is just the strength of Kale right there. As you can see, as he fought Nocturne, he was actually backing up and auto attacking. He was trying to kite him, he was trying to stay out of his attack range and just making sure that he survived to deal as much damage as possible. And as you can see, once you get Q'd by Kale, you're not getting away. Unless you have a blink, unless you have a ton of mobility, which Nidalee did not have yet. And he now has his ult, he can now be extra aggressive, start doing some extreme dives, and just trying to be a bigger lane bully. Now, top lane snowballs for a lot of reasons, and you're not going to see some of the reasons, you're not going to see a lot of lane freezing in this case, but once you're ahead in a position like Rincent, with a character like Rincent's, it's very hard to fall behind. So Nidalee wants to sustain, but Rincent is in a position where he can always prevent her sustain. And every time she goes in for any sort of harass, she's just going to lose these trades by such a high margin that she's going to have to either not harass or go back. And you'll notice something, Rincent doesn't take damage from melee creeps. He has the defensive masteries for both creep attack damage reduction and normal attack damage reduction, and that's enough to bring the creep's damage down to 0. So melee creeps do not damage him, range creeps still do, and that is a big part of his harassment, because now he can harass near 1 million melee creeps and survive. And you'll notice right there, he uses the ult just to absorb damage, not to keep himself alive at the last second, which I see a lot of people do with Kale. And I understand the reasoning behind it, it's kind of a bait, but there are so many spells that if someone is about to die, that will kill them afterwards, that it's just not worth it. They can use Ignite, for example, and then Kale Shield will end in 2 seconds, and they'll die. So Kale Shield is best used to absorb a lot of damage early on in a fight. If you see someone use a ton of burst, use that ult and survive. Old Rise back in 2009, whose ult was Spell Flux, you would use that to absorb Spell Flux, and his ult would be down and he'd be worthless, and you'd win a fight. And just watch the use of Kale ult in this dive. So they're going on Caitlyn, she used her heal, she has a little bit of tankiness left, and the ult is used on Mundo just to absorb tower damage. And you'll notice he gets really low just from tower attacks and his W. And had he not had that ult on him, he would have died. Now unfortunately he dies to the Ahri anyways, but you get the point. And dives like that, it's not a good idea to dive when you don't know where the enemy mid is, when you don't know where the enemy Nocturne is, because a counter gank can be so much worse than just that initial engagement. And in this case they went 2 for 3, and they're gonna lose Dragon out of it too. Top lane also goes down. And that's just kind of how top works. When you go for that Dragon pressure, for that bot lane gank pressure, as top lane, and leave them unattended, they will kill your tower. Sometimes it can be a good thing actually, because if you're losing the lane and they push you in, well, now you can farm safely. But it's generally not a good thing in top lane. And as you can see, Snack Attack just hasn't adjusted to the damage Rincent deals. And this is actually very understandable, because how many people play Kale consistently? So when people face a new champion or character they're not used to or forgot how they work, you see a lot of people just make a lot of sloppy mistakes. And it's very easy to go, oh man, this is the worst Snack Attack ever. This is a Snack Attack where I want, like, I don't know, prunes or circus peanuts, one of the worst candies ever. And the thing is, he's not doing well, but he doesn't know what Kale does. And I like this engagement just because you see once again the mobility of Kale. He's moving back, he's staying out of range as much as he can while still applying that damage. And he just has enough damage to kill Ahri before he dies himself. Mundo does go down, but still not bad. And just a moment to talk about kiting. Kiting is something that you need to learn on any sort of ranged AD, where you just want to move back constantly. Just always be moving away just so you can always do that damage. So move back, attack, move back, attack. And that's how characters like Ezreal get very, very strong. Because if there's a Garen attacking Ezreal, he's never going to catch up, and he's going to take damage and die still. That's a very specific example, but that's just why bruisers don't always automatically kill AD carries. Because they're backing up, they're attacking, they're just kiting them and making it hard to deal damage. It's actually why characters like Renekton suffer quite a bit against good teams and good players. And once again, Snack Attack just can't deal with Kale's damage. He doesn't know. And when you don't know what a character does and they're killing you, start playing safer, start playing defensively. Try to think about the situation. In this case, every time Nidalee goes for any sort of engage, Rincent just stands his ground and fights. He can take Nidalee on. You gotta learn that, oh, okay, well, if he can just fight me, I should just not fight him. I should just try and farm safely, try and get into a better position, get some big items to really match up with him. This actually happens with Mordekaiser a lot. A lot of people have trouble with Mordekaiser, but even in top lane. However, you eventually learn, if I approach him from a different angle that creeps aren't at, I can win these fights with him. And it's just kind of situations like that where you want to learn how to adapt. Now this is one of like the best situations to be in. A, they're winning the fight, Caitlyn's already dead, but Kale has a very, very strong chasing advantage. Now he still doesn't have that W, but Kale has a fairly high base movement speed for an AD carry. 310 instead of 300 and 305. You add in factors like Lulu's W, and she is this dangerous, unstoppable 480 movement speed beast of a carry. Factor in Ghost 2 and it's that much scarier. And as you can see, just the damage is just high. He's able to tank tower shots, he's able to go in there, and unfortunately his team follows him. And I say unfortunately because a lot of people, when they see that dive, they immediately go into, but the team was low on HP, the enemy team was respawning, Ahri was back up, and this dive is going to punish them. They're going to lose people. And while Rincent diving may have not been the best idea on its own, it could have worked, he could have done some damage, and he might have actually gotten out. Once his team had followed him, he realized he had to stay in and keep applying pressure, and the team ended up dying as a result. But that's just a disconnect in solo queue, something you can coordinate in fives. Just say, alright, I'm going to go dive them, nobody follow me. Had the team not followed Kale, it might have worked. Unfortunately, it's just a psychological response. When you see your teammate go in, you want to go in too. Because you know if you don't go in, he's guaranteed to lose, and you're just going to lose anyways with him dead. And once again, just this constant chasing. The W from Kale is actually really good at this. It's awful at sustaining. It's one of the worst sustain spells in the game in terms of healing. But the movement speed is just those couple seconds of moving fast, and you apply the Q slow, you apply red buff. Those couple seconds are huge. Now, to talk about Rincent's item build, he's building Black Cleaver because it really supplements A, Corki, and B, his passive. The passive on Kale, of course, the more you attack, the more you reduce the enemy's MR and armor up to 15%. And that's a lot. 15 may not seem like a huge amount, but it ends up being less than half a Last Whisper. And the fact that it's reduction for the entire team is what makes it really powerful, because now Corki gets that added benefit. And as you can see, Nidalee just, at this point, she can't even just escape. The red buff on Kale is too much. It might actually treat it as a melee red buff. I'm not sure on that. It's Kale's got some really weird interactions because of how her E works. I think it's actually melee, and for the purposes of Youmuu's too, she's a melee character. But it's a strong slot, and she just deals so much damage that she can just turn around and kill Nocturne at any point. And in cases like this, you've gotten 2 kills. What do you want to do? You see Caitlyn bottom. There's only 2 people who can contest. Go for Baron. Now this is a fairly early Baron. 20 minutes is, you're getting near the normal time, but the team is still fairly weak at doing it. As you can see, Mundo takes a ton of damage. Unfortunately, Corki was at bottom lane still. They were not expecting that catch, and the poke from Ahri is enough to get the team to back off. Also, they go to kill her, but after having killed her, they just do not have the HP to safely finish Baron. Lulu cannot tank Baron. She has very little armor. She'll take like 2 shots, and if you crits, she's dead. But that was it for part 1. The studio saying, see you in part 2. Okay, so we're back, and I actually did not have a lot to say about Kale. I think the best resource right now is going to be the solo mid guide from Rincent. I'm just promoting it because I could give a lot of advice right now, but it's going to be a better resource. It's going to be stronger, and there you go. But I just want to talk about heroes like Kale that are underused. So Kale's got very unique skills. She has a speed boost that can be cast on allies, and an ult that makes you invincible. And the question is, how do you utilize these skills? Also, don't forget her passive, which reduces MR and armor by a percentage based off auto attacks. It's actually pretty hard to get off all 5 stacks though, so that's kind of an issue. But just in general, think of characters like Kale that are very underutilized. And ask yourself, well, why don't people use them? And you'll notice that a lot of characters, they might have flaws, but they're actually very, very usable if they have a unique skill that makes them work. So an example of a character that might not work could be Karma, for example, because her heal, while it's AoE, it's very, very situational, it's hard to pull off. Her shield, it's very damaging, but you're reliant on her R, which means you can't heal. She's got a lot of internal problems, but at the same time, she has a unique skill set. So there might be a way to make the shield combination work. There might be a way to make the heal work. If you think of the recent Dignitas lineup that had Lulu and Soraka, and the idea was to have a lot of HP, Karma could actually work in this situation because she will get a lot of AP from her passive, have a very strong shield. The Soraka heal becomes that much stronger. So she may not work, but at the same time she may not have this unique use. This is of course all theory crafting. I love Karma, one of my favorite characters, and I think she's pretty atrocious. But that is how I feel, and I will still love her. I just love the way that she walks in a completely just ridiculous manner for someone who's fighting giant robots and a rat. But anyhow, Twitch would be another good example. Twitch in the jungle is actually really scary for this early part of the game. The first few levels, he's got amazing ganks. And you don't see him used because he's actually very hard to play, because he's so squishy. But try to think of characters like this and how they don't work normally, but you can make them work. And then this is what leads to different team comps, to team compositions that are centered around a character. And if you set it up right, they can really shine. But anyhow, it's just a bit of ranting, and let's hop into the replay. And I hope... So last we left off, Baron did not go as well as expected, but Rincent's ahead. Blue team is ahead, red team is definitely having some problems right now, but they can always deal with it. A good engagement with Blitzcrank is normally what you would do in these situations. But we're going to discover Kale has another really big strength, which is saving people who have gotten caught. Now, if she's incredibly far away, obviously it's not going to work, but that ult, especially if it's someone like Morgana who can initiate, can be enough to just turn the tide of a fight. Now, I know what you're thinking, well, if Blitzcrank hooks Morgana, that's bad. Not necessarily. If they get enough CC on Morgana, which they should be able to, she won't be able to ult, she won't be able to zone this, she'll just die. And without that amazing CC and amazing damage coming out from Morgana, all of a sudden, blue team's a lot weaker, and they have to rely on Mundo to run in. But that will happen later. For right now, we still have the usual antics, which is just the massive CC and slow coming in from Kale. Now that was started with a Mundo Cleaver, But Ari's having trouble getting away just from the red buff. The Mundo Cleaver, the Q from Kale, is an incredibly good slow. And the W from Kale is enough to really get her into fights to the right spot. And as you can see, they're trying to do something, but without a hard engage, they just do not have an answer to the high damage coming out from blue side. And a lot of it is just because of the very high synergy, and I love this. So that Morgana binding is just enough to let blue side just nail her and kill her. 2 seconds was all they needed for that burst. Now, Morgana, Corki, and Kale actually work together in a very unique way. So Morgana reduces MR, Corki reduces armor, and then Kale and Morgana, or Kale reduces both. So they all deal magic damage. They all, well, Corki and Kale do physical damage. Morgana does too, technically, but not a whole lot. And this synergy actually really comes into play because it's a shred team. It's not intentional shred team, but it's a shred team that synergizes, especially because of the hybrid damage coming out of Corki and Kale. Now, it's really, really unique, and it's a weird thing to see, but if there's someone to protect Corki and Kale and just make sure they can keep auto-attacking, which Kale can do almost on her own, they need some support from someone else, then they have this really strong synergy, and two really high damage characters that work with each other to do more damage. And that's just impressive, actually. I mean, I would not normally think of Corki as being someone to pair up with Kale just for the damage. And this initiate right here, Rincent is caught. They're blowing a lot on him. But he gets the ult off. And what became a bad engage is now a fight they're winning. They weren't able to kill him fast enough, and the Lulu CC, the Morgana CC follow-up was just too much. And this is a very special case because you have Lulu support, which combined with Kale, combined with Morgana, means that all of a sudden people have a bunch of extra HP and shields. So this is definitely unique, where getting caught means you're surrounded by the enemy and Lulu ult will CC them. But still, the idea is there, which is somebody can get caught, and a properly timed ult can involve them blowing a ton of their CCs, a ton of their cooldowns to kill someone who can't be killed. Now, it's not always going to work. You can always ult that guy who got caught, but they might just die anyways. They might save their CCs. They might expect it. And there's that level of just kind of, well, what are people going to do that you have to get used to? Because if they don't blow their cooldowns and you don't use your ult, well, that's better for you. But anyhow, blue side is moving towards Baron. The game really starts revolving around Baron after a certain point, and in this case, they're just not letting any pressure up. And once again, we see the same thing. Someone gets caught. Morgana gets ulted. She does not have Zonias to keep her alive. She just has Kale ult, and it's enough. It's a very, very unique synergy, and it works really well. And they call it Blitzcrank Control, but think about it this way. If you're playing League of Legends and you have a chance to catch their initiator and CC them and burst them down before they can really start to fight well, it's gonna be great. Like, as weird as it sounds, if you can grab a Mumu and kill him before his team shows up, that's really good. His ult might CC you for a bit, but it's not going to be enough if he's already dead by the time his team is trying to follow up. Don't grab Alistar though, that is not someone you should ever grab. And once again, same thing. They get a grab, the Kale ult comes. What I'm trying to say, I guess, is that Blitzcrank is apparently countered by Kale, which isn't really that true, but she definitely has an upper edge over him in a lot of circumstances. And as you can see, Rincent finishes off his build as a normal AD carry. He has Infinity Edge, he has Phantom Dancer, and he does 264 attack damage, but it's being amplified by his high attack speed, it's being amplified by his E, and it's being amplified by the crit damage from Infinity Edge. Just all of these numbers being multiplied together mean he does a ton of damage. And as is prone to happen, red team goes for an interrupt on Baron and get caught in the process. I mean, if you think the enemy team has Baron and you can't fight them, then don't fight. And, well, that's pretty much game. With Blitzcrank dead, they're not going to be able to start a fight well. And there's something else. There's another reason that they can't win right now. But Nocturne's going to do something. Nocturne's going to... No, you can't. Somebody actually DC'd and left. And, well, the game was over anyways, but good try, Nocturne. You could have saved the day. Well, the studio, I hope you enjoyed this replay. And you should check out Rincent's not AP, 80 top Kale for more information. He has a guide on solo mid, and that's linked in the description. The studio saying adios.